I'm Lana, 34 years old, and 3 weeks ago, I watched my little sister stand on stage in front of hundreds of people and accept an award for a career she built on my work. Her voice shook just the right amount when she said, "My sister taught me everything I know," and the audience ate it up. People clapped. Someone behind me whispered how sweet it was. But I just sat there, in the last row, with my hands wrapped around the strap of my bag and my heart feeling like it had been scraped raw. Violet had taken everything from me, my name, my future, even the chance to be a mother. She thought I was gone. She thought she had erased me for good. But I was there that night, and what she didn't know was that I brought something with me. Something that would finally show the world who she really was. After my mom died, it was just me and my dad. We didn't talk about it much. He kept himself busy with work and fixing things around the house, while I disappeared into my sketchbooks. I was 17 and already learning how to shrink myself into silence. My dad wasn't the emotional type, but he always showed up driving me to art school interviews, bringing me tea late at night when I stayed up drawing. We were quiet people, but we understood each other. After dinner, he'd read in his chair, and I'd sketch at the table, and somehow that counted as time together. I thought it would stay like that for a while, just the two of us figuring it out. But one evening, about a year later, he came home with a woman named Ngok, and nothing was the same after that. Ngoc was beautiful in the kind of way that made people sit up straighter. She had perfect posture, expensive perfume, and a smile that felt like something you'd see in a magazine. My dad met her through a coworker and fell hard fast. Within 3 months, she moved into our house, bringing her daughter Violet with her. Violet was younger than me by about 7 years. She was quiet, polite, always said, "Thank you," and called me big sister in this soft little voice that made my dad melt. She was the kind of kid adults loved. At first I tried. I helped her with her school art projects, showed her how to mix colors. She followed me everywhere like a shadow, wide-eyed and curious. I thought we were starting to build something, even if it wasn't perfect. But there was something about the way she watched me when she thought I wasn't looking. Something that felt a little too close. It started small. One day I came home and noticed one of my paintings was gone from the hallway. In its place was a bright watercolor of a bird. Violets. I asked my dad and he just said, "Ngok thought it brightened the space." A week later, my studio door was locked when I usually left it open. Another week, my art supplies were rearranged, some even missing. When I brought it up, Ngok said maybe I was too possessive over my tools and suggested I learn to share. Violet was painting more now, using techniques I had shown her, but they looked eerily familiar. Sometimes almost identical to sketches from my old notebooks. I stopped saying anything. Every time I tried, it felt like the air went cold. The walls of the house used to feel safe. Now they were lined with glass, and I was the one walking barefoot. One night I came back late from class. I parked outside instead of in the garage and came in through the side door, hoping not to wake anyone. I was halfway down the hall when I heard voices coming from the kitchen. Ngok and Violet. I froze. "She's too soft," Ngok was saying. "She paints pretty things, but she never know how to make them valuable." Violet didn't answer right away. Then she said, quiet and sharp, "That's why I watch her." They both laughed. Not loud, just this light, knowing laugh that made my stomach twist. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. I just stood there, one foot behind the other, like some ghost in my own house. I don't remember how long I stayed frozen. But something shifted in me that night. A part of me went silent. And another part, one I didn't know I had, opened its eyes. I got my first real break at 26. A small gallery downtown had seen my portfolio and offered me a spot in their spring show. It wasn't huge, but it meant something. I spent weeks preparing the pieces, oil on canvas, mostly big, emotional work. I'd locked everything in my studio, labeled and wrapped. But 3 days before the show, I came home to find the studio door wide open and the canvases gone. I panicked, called the gallery, thinking maybe my dad or Ngok had helped transport them early. They hadn't. That night, I found out where the paintings had gone. Violet posted a photo online, standing in front of them at a student show, claiming them as hers. She said they were inspired by sisterhood and longing. The crowd loved it. No one questioned it. When I confronted her, she smiled and said, "You never signed them." And that was the first time I realized she didn't just want to be. Like me, she wanted to erase me. I didn't have much left by then. My name didn't mean anything in the art world anymore. Not after Violet had carved herself a place using everything I'd built. But I had one thing. I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but it felt like a reason to keep going. I kept it quiet, just me and a growing little secret, something that was mine. I thought I could start fresh, maybe even move away, but somehow Violet found out. She showed up one morning with coffee and a fake smile, acting like she wanted to reconnect. I should have known better. That night, I started bleeding. I don't know if it was the stress or something else, but the doctor said it just happened. And that was it, gone. Violet never said a word about it afterward, never asked if I was okay. But the next week, she painted a piece titled "Fragile. Things break," and posted it with a quote. "Some women just aren't meant to be mothers." People called it bold. I called it what it was, cruel. I stopped speaking to them after the miscarriage. My dad tried, once or twice, but I was done. I moved into a small apartment across town and went quiet. I got a job teaching drawing classes. At a community center, nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills. I kept my head down, stayed off social media, stopped showing my work. Violet kept rising. Gallery openings, interviews, magazine spreads. She spoke about trauma and recovery, like they were things she'd survived. Meanwhile, I rebuilt myself from the ground up. Not in a movie montage kind of way. It was slower than that. I went days without speaking, weeks without painting. But little by little, I started drawing again. Not to show anyone, just to remind myself I still could. I read books about art forgery, color theory, and digital tracking. Not because I'd planned anything, at least not yet. But because I knew one day her lies would catch up. And when they did, I'd be ready. I sent her a message out of nowhere. Just a simple, "Been thinking about you. Want to catch up?" She replied in under a minute. We met at a gallery opening. She was headlining, full of lights and tiny glasses of wine. She hugged me like nothing had ever happened. "You look amazing," she said, eyes scanning me like a radar. I smiled and lied. "You too." We talked about nothing important, weather, trends, who was curating what. I told her I was thinking about painting again, maybe even teaching. She said I should come to her studio sometime, get back in the game. "I'd love that," I said. Every word tasted like metal. I didn't trust a thing she said, but I needed her to think I did. Because if you want to catch a snake, you don't chase it. You sit still, you wait, and you let it slither close on its own. She invited me to her studio a week later. It was in a trendy warehouse district, all exposed brick and hanging plants. I complimented the space. She offered tea. I declined. While she showed me her latest collection, I nodded and smiled. But my eyes were on the corners. On the table by the window were 3 sketchbooks. 2 of them had my initials etched faintly in the bottom corner. She hadn't even bothered to tear the pages out. I asked about a particular piece, one that mirrored a series I had done years ago. She said, "Oh, that was something I dreamed about. Just came to me." I took photos with my phone when she wasn't looking. Later, I traced metadata, found old gallery listings she had modified. Emails she forwarded to herself from our shared drive years ago. Every click was a needle into my own skin. But it was working, she didn't know it yet. But her story had holes. And I was filling them with facts. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No wood-paneled drama. Just beige walls, humming a sea, and the faint smell of coffee. I sat behind my lawyer, clutching a folder that had taken me months to compile. Emails, sketch timestamps, digital art logs. Even the NDA Violet had forged Dad's name on. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't nervous, I was ready. When the judge called our case, I stood. Across the aisle, Violet was flawless, cream blazer, subtle makeup. Her lawyer, older, confident, smiled like he'd already won. My attorney presented our evidence. Laid it out, one by one, organized and calm. I watched Violet's eyes, waiting. For a flicker, there was none. She didn't even blink. When her lawyer stood, he didn't even look at the papers. "Your Honor," he said, "these documents, regardless of content, were obtained without proper chain of custody. We request they be excluded." My stomach dropped. The judge paused, reviewed something, then nodded. "Excluded," he said. Just like that. A year of my life vanished under 3 syllables. Violet didn't gloat. She didn't have to. Her silence said it all. He didn't stop there. Violet's lawyer adjusted his glasses and began painting me as an unstable former employee with a grudge. He called my work collaborative inspiration, not theft. He brought up my mental health records, anxiety, postpartum depression, as if they were tattoos of failure. "Miss Caldwell has a history of emotional instability," he said, voice smooth like a lullaby. "And while we empathize, it clouds her judgment of events." I felt my ears burn. My lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The judge allowed it for context. Then came the dagger Violet statement. She stood, eyes glassy with perfectly rehearsed sincerity. "I love my sister," she said, but watching her spiral after her miscarriage was heartbreaking. "I only stepped in because she stopped showing up to work." I wanted to scream but didn't. She spoke about my absence like it was abandonment, like I'd failed Dad, the company, her. And the courtroom lapped it up quiet, still believing. Every word, my own silence started to feel like guilt. Violet sat down, wiping away a fake tear. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispered something, and she smiled, small, triumphant. I stared straight ahead. I would not flinch. The ruling didn't take long. "In favor of the defendant," the judge said. The gavel struck once, cold, final. My lawyer placed a hand on my shoulder, whispered something like, "We'll appeal." I didn't hear it. I watched Violet stand, thank the court, and walk out like the winner of a pageant. People began to leave, reporters, interns, the security guard by the door looked at me like I might break. But I didn't. I gathered my folder, useless now, and walked out with my head high. Outside, the sun was too bright. My phone buzzed with texts I didn't open. In the car, I stared at the windshield for 10 minutes before turning the key. No tears, no yelling. Just the quiet hum of failure pressing against my ribs. Violet had taken everything, my career, my voice, even my grief, and spun it into a weapon, and the world believed her. But in that silence, somewhere between breath and bitterness, I felt something settle. Not anger, not defeat. Something older, colder, a plan. She thought this was the end. But endings, I've learned, are just quieter beginnings. Losing in court didn't break me. It burned, sure. But there's a difference between burning and breaking. The next morning, I brewed my coffee slower than usual. I watched the ground swirl like smoke in water and thought about every word Violet had said on the stand.
Every
lie she told, every truth I had buried too deep, too late. I didn't scream. I didn't call anyone. I just sat with it. Let it settle like dust on an old mirror. Then I pulled out the drive I hadn't shown my lawyer. It was encrypted, hidden inside an email chain from 5 years ago. A backup of our shared project folder, timestamps, login trails, voice memos. Things I hadn't looked at since before. Dad died. I clicked it open. It was all still there. All the pieces she hadn't erased, I hadn't lost. I had simply played too soft. That was about to change. Her name was Elise Tran. Years ago, she had interned under Violet Bright. Ambitious. And gone too soon. Rumors swirled back then about Elise quitting abruptly. No explanation, just vanished. But I remembered her. Not just her talent, but the look in her eyes when Violet borrowed one of her designs and pitched it as her own. Elise hadn't fought back. She had just walked out. I found her on LinkedIn, now working freelance branding in Austin. I sent a message, simple, direct. You once trusted Violet. I did too. She destroyed me. I'm trying to prove it. I think you have a piece of that story. She didn't reply for 3 days. Then one night my phone lit up. A voicemail. I never thought I'd hear your name again, Elise said. But yeah. I still have that folder. I didn't delete a thing. For the first time in weeks, I smiled, and it wasn't bitter. She didn't send the files right away. First, she asked to meet. A diner, off the highway, noon, no lawyers, no phones. I drove 4 hours without music. Just silence and the sound of everything falling back into place. Elise looked older, tired, but not broken. She slid a flash drive across the table wrapped in a receipt. Backed up 3 times, she said. Violet promised me credit. Then used my entire pitch deck, word for word. When I confronted her, she said, "You're lucky I don't bury you." I asked why she kept it. Because liars always forget who was listening. I plugged the drive into my laptop that night. It was all their recordings of Violet rehearsing stolen presentations, bragging to someone over Zoom about cleaning up Lana's mess. Even a clip where she laughed. If she ever wakes up, I'll say she's just hormonal again. My hands didn't shake. I just hit save. Twice. I didn't go back to my old lawyer. He had tried, but he played defense. I needed a fence. So I called Clara Henson. A name whispered in corporate circles like a warning label: brilliant, brutal, allergic to be. She didn't wear suits. She wore denim and boots and read court transcripts like murder novels. Her office was bare except for 3 things: a cactus, a framed bar license, and a quote pinned to the wall. People lie. Metadata doesn't. I handed her the drive. She didn't blink. Just listened, rewound, listened again. "You've been quiet too long," she finally said. "Let's ruin her." I didn't flinch, I didn't smile, I just nodded once. That night, Clara filed the complaint: fraud, intellectual theft, perjury. We didn't leak it, we didn't tweet. We waited, because when a storm's coming, you don't scream. You let the wind carry it in. The motion was clean, precise, no theatrics. Just a 48-page document that read like a scalpel carving through lies. Clara included timestamps, cross-referenced file histories, witness affidavits, everything Violet thought she had buried. At the core, Elise's recordings stitched together with forensic reports proving authorship and edits. Clara filed it in a higher court, different jurisdiction, different judge. One who had ruled on tech IP cases before, and not kindly. Violet's team didn't see it coming. We served them on a Wednesday, mid-conference. By Thursday, they'd filed for an emergency delay. Denied. On Friday, the case was accepted and scheduled. 2 weeks. No time for her to spin. No room for her to dance. I didn't post about it. Didn't call anyone. Just turned off my notifications and went for a walk. The sky was overcast. The wind was sharp. And for the first time in months, I wasn't scared of it. The first article dropped on a Monday morning. Small outlet. No photos. Just a headline. Tech heiress accused of stealing sister's work, perjury alleged. Within hours, 3 more followed. Then BuzzView picked it up. Then Clickline. The story mutated quotes from old classmates, ex-employees, even a startup founder who claimed Violet stole his logo. Clara didn't comment. Neither did I. We let the headlines do the shouting. On social, threads unraveled her image. Clips of her interviews, tweets that aged poorly, contradictions in timelines, hashtags flipped. Hashtag Visionary Violet turned into hashtag Violet the Thief. Her PR team tried to kill the noise, issued a bland statement about misunderstandings and deep respect for family. It made things worse. Because the one thing people hate more than a villain is a liar pretending to be a saint. I stayed quiet, let them talk. Because now the weight wasn't on my voice. It was on hers, and it was cracking. By Friday, her endorsements started pulling out. Quietly at first, one brand reviewing our partnership, another shifting strategic priorities. But people noticed, screenshots spread. Comment sections turned. On a live stream meant to promote her new mentorship program, Violet froze when asked about the lawsuit. She smiled too wide, stammered, ended early. Within hours, the clip was viral. Watch Violet glitch in 4K, trended for a day. Then came the leaked emails, not from me, not from Clara, someone inside her team maybe. They showed her manipulating timelines, mocking mental health claims, joking about gaslighting Lana. Into silence. That did it. Public sympathy collapsed. Influencers retracted their support. Even her own brand ambassadors scrubbed old posts. She posted one last video, tired eyes, fake apology, no admission. Comments were brutal. Too late. Not sorry. You did it, sorry you got caught. For once, she didn't respond. Because there was no script for this kind of silence. The courthouse smelled like old coffee and air conditioning. I sat in the front row, hands still, phone off. Violet walked. In 10 minutes late. Her hair was too neat, like she had something to prove. She didn't look at me, not once. Her lawyer shuffled papers like he was already tired. I watched her sit down, shoulders stiff, lips pressed into a line. The woman who once bragged she could own a room in heels looked like she couldn't. Breathe in her flats. The judge entered. Everyone stood. My stomach didn't drop. No racing heart. Just quiet. It wasn't fear anymore. It was math. A process. Evidence. Witnesses. A story told right, without shaking. When the judge said, "Let's begin," I didn't flinch. Because for the first time in a long time, Violet wasn't the one holding the microphone. Clara stood up first. No slideshow. No raised voice. Just a folder. A flash drive and her calm. "We'd like to enter exhibits A through G," she said. The judge nodded. A screen lit up. The first audio played. Violet's voice, laughing. If Lana ever wakes up, she won't remember enough to fight back. Some people in the courtroom shifted in their seats. The second clip was worse. Her admitting to borrowing Elise's deck and calling it a strategic rebrand. Clara let the silence hang after each one. Then came emails, time-stamped, edited only once. The metadata proved it all. She walked the room through each document like it was a grocery list. Facts, proof, no drama. Violet didn't interrupt. She didn't blink much either. Her lawyer scribbled something. She didn't look, and I just sat there, breathing slow. Because this wasn't revenge. This was reality catching up. Violet leaned toward the mic. "Those clips are out of context," she said, voice flat. The emails were drafts, not final versions. Her lawyer nodded like that meant something. Clara didn't blink. "Let's walk through the context then," she said. Slide, screenshot, timeline. This email was sent 5 minutes after the deck was uploaded to your private server. Violet shifted. It was a collaborative effort. "Clara, then. Why was Elise's name removed from all metadata, and yours added an hour later?" No answer. The judge asked Violet to clarify. She stared at her lawyer. He stayed quiet. Clara continued. Each sentence shorter than the last. Each fact sharper. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of Violet's story crumbling. "Would you like to hear the part where you threatened to destroy Elise's reputation if she went public?" Clara asked. Violet said nothing. She just looked down. First time all morning. Elise walked in with her hair tied back and a cardigan too big for the room. She looked at no one. Not even me. Just sat, raised her hand and swore in. Claire asked the first question. "Did you create the pitch deck titled Polaris?" Elise nodded. "Yes." "Did Violet contribute too?" "Its content?" "No." Her voice didn't shake. Her eyes didn't wander. She just spoke, clear, like she'd rehearsed it for months. Clara pulled up the design file metadata. Elise confirmed every version. Every change, every timestamp. Then she paused. "She told me if I said anything, she'd blacklist me," Elise said. Said no one would believe me over her. Someone in the back of the courtroom coughed. Violet didn't react. But her hands were gripping the table, white knuckles. Elise looked straight at the judge. I believed her. Until I saw Lana stand up. Then she looked at me. And smiled. Once. The judge took off his glasses. Looked at the room like he was weighing the air. "I've reviewed the materials, and the evidence presented is substantial," he said. His voice was calm. "No drama. Just wait. Ms. Violet has not sufficiently explained the inconsistencies in authorship, nor the metadata tampering." He paused. Violet didn't look up. "Pending a full hearing, I am issuing a preliminary injunction. The project in question will be frozen. All related revenues placed under escrow." Her lawyer opened his mouth. The judge raised a hand.
This
is not up for debate. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Small but sharp, he turned to me. Miss Lana, your claims hold merit. You will be granted temporary rights pending final ruling. I didn't smile, didn't cry, just nodded. Because this wasn't the end, but it was the line in the sand, and Violet? She knew she'd just been pushed behind it. By the time I got home, the headline was everywhere. Judge freezes Violet Cross's assets amidst fraud allegations. Clickline had a play-by-play thread. BuzzView called it the fall of a tech darling. Even the business blogs weighed in, dragging up old red flags people had ignored. On social, it spread faster than any promo she'd ever done. Memes, side-by-sides, hashtag edits. Someone made a remix of her apology video auto-tuned to clips from court. It was petty. It was loud. It was deserved. I didn't post anything. Didn't retweet, but I watched. And for once, I didn't feel alone in the fight. People cared. Some messaged me, not knowing if I'd reply. Just saying, thank you for standing up. And I did reply. Because even if it started with just me and Clara in a cold room with documents, now it was something else. Now it was out in the world. Violet left through the side exit, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. A man with a camera called her name. She didn't stop. Didn't answer. Her coat was too big for her frame now. Or maybe she just looked smaller. Her lawyer trailed behind, talking to someone on the phone, already walking ahead. She didn't follow. Just stood for a second near the curb, as if forgetting where she was. I stayed by the courthouse steps, watched. She didn't look back. Not once, and I didn't wave, didn't smile, didn't speak. Because there was nothing left to say. The story was done talking. The lies had burned themselves out. And all that remained was ash and truth. Some stories don't end with applause. They end when no one needs to scream anymore. The car was quiet. Even with the city screaming outside. Reporters, cameras, people yelling her name like she'd won something. Lana kept her hands folded in her lap, fingers still cold despite the summer heat. The windows were tinted, but she could still see the flashes, like fireworks without celebration. Her lawyer talked, saying something about interviews next. Steps, possible statements. She nodded without really listening. Because inside her chest, there wasn't relief. There wasn't even satisfaction. Just space. Like something big had been carved out and all that was left was air. The kind of silence that didn't hurt, but didn't comfort either. Across the seat, her phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, DMs, mentions. Everyone wanted her to say something. But what do you say when the story people cheered for was the one that broke you? She remembered the moment Violet stepped out, not defiant. Not broken. Just empty. The crowd didn't boo. They didn't cheer either. It was like the city exhaled, unsure of what to feel. Lana stayed back then, standing in the hallway with her arms crossed, watching from the shadows. She had imagined this moment. 1,000 times, some with yelling, some with apologies, some with chaos. But not this. Violet walked like someone who knew the end had come not with a bang, but with the quiet click of a door that would never open again. And maybe that was worse. Maybe that was the real sentence. No cuffs, no drama. Just truth that stuck to your skin and wouldn't wash off. The questions came fast. How does it feel to win? Do you have a message for her? Will you press charges? They wanted something sharp. A soundbite. A headline. Even people she barely knew sent texts saying things like, so proud of you, or she had it coming. But Lana didn't answer. She didn't post, didn't call anyone back. Not because she was hiding, but because none of it felt worth breaking the silence for. Truth didn't need a microphone. It had already done its job. And she'd learned something in all those years of being quiet. Sometimes silence says more than the loudest scream ever could. She drove past places she hadn't seen in years. The old corner store, the cracked mural on 3rd Street. And finally, the apartment, the one she hadn't stepped into since the worst of it. The building hadn't changed. Same rust on the stair rail, same flickering hallway light. Inside, the unit was still empty, no furniture. Just dust and memory. She stood in the center of the living room, the one where she used to curl into herself, afraid to breathe too loud. This was where she'd waited for calls that never came, where she'd convinced herself she was the problem. But today it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a chapter. Once she'd finished reading, Lana didn't cry, didn't touch the walls. She just stood there, letting the silence wrap around her like a soft old coat. There was no post, no article, no interview. She didn't open her socials, didn't scroll through the headlines or the comment threads. The world could say what it wanted. Lana had already heard everything that mattered, not from others but from herself. She sat cross-legged on the bare floor, eyes closed, breathing in the stillness. It was the first time in years she didn't feel the need to prove anything, not to Violet, not to the court, not even to the girl she used to be. People expected her to celebrate, to gloat, but revenge wasn't the prize, peace was. And for the first time, that peace wasn't something she had to fight for. It was just quiet, undemanding, enough. Weeks passed. The world moved on, headlines faded, and Lana stayed quiet, not out of fear anymore, but choice. Then one morning she opened a blank document, not to expose anyone, not to relive what had already been buried, but to understand herself. She wrote without a plan. Just let it pour. The nights she didn't sleep, the mornings she still showed up, the moments she almost gave in, and the strange peace of not doing so. It wasn't a memoir. It wasn't even a story. It was a truth she needed to see with her own eyes, typed in her own words. And when she finished the first page, she didn't feel triumphant, just It was the first thing she'd done in a long time that wasn't about surviving. It was about remembering she didn't announce her return, no long caption, no dramatic reveal. Just a photo taken from her kitchen window. Morning light spilling across a chipped mug and a blooming plant she'd nearly killed last winter. The caption read, "Some things don't need noise to grow back. Silence can be strong too." She didn't check the likes, didn't wait for comments. It wasn't about that. It was just something she wanted to leave there. Like setting a glass of water down for someone else who might be thirsty. Her hands trembled a little when she posted it, not out of fear, but memory. But when she closed the app and looked back at the real cup on the table, it felt different, like proof that she was still here, that she had something left worth showing the world, even if it was just light and silence. At first, it was just one. A DM from a woman in Ohio who said she hadn't posted anything in months because she didn't know how to put words to what she'd been through. "Your photo felt like someone left the light on for me," she wrote. Then another came in.
And
another. None of them wanted gossip. None of them asked about court dates or revenge. They talked about sisters who lied, stepmothers who smiled too sweet, jobs they lost, babies they mourned in silence. Each message felt like a hand reaching out, not to take but to say, "I've been there too." Lana read them all. Some twice, some with tears she didn't expect. These weren't fans. They were survivors, like her. Like the woman she'd become when no one was watching. She didn't try to fix anything. Didn't offer advice or links to self-help books. She just answered one by one. Sometimes just a heart emoji. Sometimes just, "I'm here." Other times she wrote, "I believe you." That was enough. And she knew why, because back then that's all she had wanted too. Someone to say she wasn't crazy, that what she felt was real. Lana didn't talk about her past unless asked. Even then she kept it simple. No dramatics, no retellings, just connection, honest and quiet. And slowly the messages became conversations. Not about pain, but about surviving it. Not about revenge, but about what came after. And in those quiet exchanges, Lana found something she didn't expect. A purpose that didn't need applause to matter. The email was brief. A nonprofit hosting a panel on emotional recovery had seen her posts. They asked if she'd speak. At first, Lana froze. The thought of standing in front of strangers, saying her name out loud, telling pieces of the story she'd kept tucked away, it felt impossible. She drafted a polite decline. But then she stared at the cursor blinking back at her. What if someone in that room was where she used to be, not needing inspiration, just needing proof that life after devastation was possible? She deleted the draft, wrote, "Yes, I'll come," instead. She didn't plan a speech, didn't rehearse. She didn't want it to sound like a movie. She wanted it to sound like a person, broken once. Still a little cracked. But breathing, walking, real. She stood at the front of a small room, no stage, no spotlight, just a circle of chairs and too many coffee cups. Her voice trembled at first, but she didn't apologize. She told them about waking up afraid, about losing more than money or a reputation, about losing trust. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. The women in the room nodded before she finished each sentence, like they already knew where the story was going because they'd lived versions of it too. No one clapped when she was done. A few wiped their eyes. One woman mouthed, "Thank you." From across the room, that was enough. In that silence, Lana felt more heard than she ever had in a courtroom. This wasn't about closure, it was about connection. And for the first time, she didn't feel like the girl who'd been betrayed. She felt like someone who made it through. Walking home that evening, Lana didn't scroll through her phone. Didn't check who tagged her, didn't care if the event made any headlines. She passed a bakery where two women from the group were still talking on the sidewalk, holding each other's hands like they'd known each other for years. And that's when it hit her she'd spent so long chasing validation from people who never really saw her. Her family, the media, even strangers online. But in that little room, with no cameras, no scripts, she had found something stronger than recognition. She had found understanding, not universal, not loud, just real. 100 quiet connections built from honesty. That was enough, more than enough. For the first time in years, Lana wasn't waiting to be seen. She was already seen, and she didn't need the world's permission to keep walking forward.